Welcome to the Autoimmune Summit today, and I am going to introduce Susan French. Not only is she a really good friend of mine, but she is very intelligent, and she has a lot to say today about how stress can hinder our wellness. So she is a functional nutrition lifestyle practitioner and also certified functional nutrition counselor. So thank you so much for doing this with me, Susan.
Oh, it's my honor. Of course. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to be able to talk with you and your viewers about this. It's a really important issue. And I think, the more we do stuff like this, the more people can avoid getting really sick because it's not expensive. It's not complicated. There are a lot of things we can do to manage our health on our own, our well-being and health before it gets too bad.
Right. It's about awareness, right? I mean, and I've got to tell you, I did not realize until after the fact that I healed. Well, I healed all my symptoms, but then I realized I still had healing to do. Even though I didn't have symptoms, I had some childhood trauma that I had to get over. And
yes.
I didn't realize that stress can get trapped in your body for like a long time. I mean, this was years ago. And, and really it was only about 3 or 4 years ago when I realized that something like this can happen. But yeah, so go ahead. I'm so, interested in learning more.
Well, you're exactly right. Holding on to that stress, we don't really realize it. And maybe at one time, maybe when you were taking Psychology 101 or something in school, you're like, oh, why do we always blame it on the parents? Why do we always go back to our childhood? It's so long ago, get over it. Well, that's good in theory, and it makes a certain amount of sense to try to move forward. But there's a couple books right back here, What My Bones Know or Body Keeps the Score. These are books that explain exactly what you're talking about, how that early childhood, our early childhood experiences can affect us for the rest of our lives. And why is that? Well, the human brain is very slow to develop. We are an advanced social species, and it means that it takes our brains, because we have a lot of different layers of our brains, and it takes our brain a long time to develop. We're very slow to develop, and 18 years later, we're ready to be considered adults and move on our own. I mean, what other species is like that? But with that slow development comes a lot of opportunity for influence, hormonal influence, environmental influence, and our brains are affected by those influences as they're developing. And so, yes, it goes back to your childhood. It's not just get over it. It's how our brains are physiologically functioning based on early childhood and pre-development. It's just fascinating. And you're absolutely right. You have to, what can we do about that now? That's what I thought early on. I'm like, okay, great. So now I know that. What can I do with it? Well, awareness, like in any program, awareness is the first step. You become aware of it. You go, oh my gosh, this has been affecting me. I cannot change it. I can agree that it is terrible and it's unfortunate that it happened and it really affected me. But now knowing that, how do I move on? And how do I stop that cycle of reacting in certain ways that I know are counterproductive, right?
Yeah. So I'm interested in knowing like what steps you might help somebody with to get over that.
Well, as you said, I think one of the first things you said was, be aware of it, become mindful. Mm-hmm. Mindfulness is our first step. Mindfulness is our first step in most everything, becoming aware, as we just said, but being mindful, really being aware and mindful can help us move on into just about anything. We're stressed out. We're a stressed out society. women your age, women my age, young women, they've got stress from their family, they're trying to work. You've got all kinds of stress coming from a lot of different angles. A lot of people, as we're growing older, we have stress. It's not like when we were raised, stress from our parents. Now we're taking care of our parents. That adds another layer of stress. We want to do it. We love them. But it does add more responsibility, more stressors. We also, get stress from just daily things on the job. We've got stress here. So we're all pretty aware of this stress. And we think, well, I'm going to get up at 4:30 and I'm going to work out and that's going to help my stress. But actually, if you're interrupting your sleep cycle, you're adding to your stress. And that's the last thing you want to do. I'm not saying don't exercise. That's not the message. Exercise is very important. But do it when your body is awake and you're not depriving your body of the sleep it needs to recover. So all of these stresses, these obvious stresses that we're dealing with every day, are only compounded by the ones we don't really think about, the environmental stresses. We can think of a lot of different things, our toxic environment, chemical stresses. We have so many different kinds of stresses coming into us that really affect our system. And how do they affect our system? Well, stress causes inflammation. Inflammation is the cause of a lot of disease states. If you can't get it, so inflammation is our body's natural and beneficial response to injuries and infections and stressors, pathogens. And what are the pathogens? We've got viruses, bacterias, we've got fungus and parasites and other toxins. So our body is constantly dealing with stress. And when you have a lot of stress coming in from all these different angles, and you're in sort of hyperfunction mode where you can feel yourself just sort of unable to slow down, you could be considered trapped in your sympathetic nervous system. What is your sympathetic nervous system? Well, it's part of your central nervous system along with your parasympathetic, but the sympathetic nervous system is great in theory. You need that extra energy to run away from the saber-toothed tiger. It's coming after you. And so, boom, your heart rate goes up, your pupils dilate, your pulse rate's out, everything is just happening in your body physiologically to get you away from that threat. Of course, in today's environment, we're not able to escape that tiger. It just keeps coming and coming from all different angles. So our sympathetic nervous system stays heightened. And so, well, you might think, okay, well, it's stress. So what? Well, there's a lot of things that happen when you are stuck in the sympathetic nervous system. It needs all this energy to help you flee. So it's sort of disables functions and systems that you don't need right now to get away from the tiger. You don't really need your digestion. If you're running, you don't need to digest your meal. You might need that food in your gut a little later. Let's just stop digestion right now. So your digestion is disabled at that time. Your immune system is disabled at that time. So all those little pathogens that we were talking about, they just sort of get free rein at this point because your body's fighting that tiger. It's doing other things. It can't concentrate on the little viruses and bacteria and stressors that are coming in, additionally chemicals. And then the third thing it does is it disables your reproductive system, because the last thing you need to be doing is thinking about anything having to do with reproduction. It's not a healthy time to be thinking about procreating. So what does that mean? Your hormones are not being regulated. And Sharon Sills, Dr. Sharon Sill, still naturopathic doctor, was saying that this hormone imbalance, particularly estrogen and progesterone in women, is a cause for the onset or progression of a lot of autoimmune diseases, including MS. So we really need to take a look at what we can do to get out of that sympathetic nervous system, those stressors. And so what can we do? We need to get out of it. We still have life going on. There's a lot of things we need to work. We need to keep fit, but there's a lot of things we can do to bring ourselves back into a place where we have a little balance. You know, the sympathetic nervous system, when I say you're stuck in it, that means you're stuck the majority of time in it, because our balance is constantly going back, sympathetic, parasympathetic. You know, it's like as quickly as having a shock, sympathetic, you take the breath, you're, and then when you realize it's not something that's a threat, parasympathetic. So it really goes back and forth. It's when you're in this heightened state that the damage really starts occurring, because you can't give yourself a break, and then you have hormone imbalance, then you have metabolic issues, and then inflammation starts. And when you have inflammation, continued inflammation causes cellular, liver, and gut issues, which leads to joint pain, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, brain function disorders, cancer, and autoimmune diseases. I mean, this is just inflammation.
So you were telling me, remember you were working with a gal and you were helping her slow down. Didn't you say she was in real estate and she was just go, 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 go? And you helped her with her calendar and her schedule and how to slow down. So what kind of things did you tell her?
Well, absolutely. You're right. Yeah, that was one client, and there have been several. That real estate gal, wonderful, productive woman trying to do it all. The family, the extended family, the real estate, the appointment. One, be mindful. Be mindful. What are you putting in your mouth? We had to take it back, because she wasn't really thinking that it was anything she was doing. She was blaming it on genetics, and she was just saying, well, this is just the way it is. This is my family. But, honestly, we can blame 5% of issues, unfortunately, on genetics, but really 95% are preventable.
Is her lifestyle, right?
Nutritional lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And part of her nutrition piece was not eating well. She's on her way from one appointment to the next. She knows she's got to eat. Just on the phone, stop at a drive-through, get something, eat it on the way. She's hanging up, doesn't remember lunch. There was no process of preparing the enzymes to help digest that. You don't even really know it was not nutrition. And micronutrient deficiencies cause dozens of diseases. Dehydration caused dozens of diseases. She exacerbates them. I mean, once she became mindful and she unplugged the scented air fresheners that she had all over her house, because she thought, well, it says it's lavender. Lavender's great. It's essential oil, right? Well, not so much when it's a plug-in and it's full of chemicals and it's polluting your indoor air. She just became more aware of her environment. We talked about the basics. Yes, she was exercising. She's getting up at 4:30 in the morning. She's one of them. Go, 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 go. We talked about her natural sleep cycle, and we tried to work more with her circadian rhythm to get back on it, and what she could do to start winding down at night, so she wasn't winding down in front of TikTok for an hour and a half, and her brain wasn't getting really hyperstimulated before she tried to go to bed. These are EMF glasses. We talked about that because she spent so much screen time. Your brain just needs to, it's like, okay, it's getting dark. It's time to
shut down, right?
Time to shut down, not time to have that sensory input. And so we talked about that. We very slowly introduce these things. If you try to give somebody a list of everything that they need to do, it's overwhelming and it's unsustainable. So that's what functional nutrition really is all about. Your doctor says you've been diagnosed with X. I don't diagnose. What I do is say, okay, I'm going to work with you to understand what your terrain is like from which X occurred. Mm-hmm. So I like to use my my logo. So this is very stylistic. It's a tree. These are the 3 branches. Mm-hmm. This is your trunk, your strong body, the mm-hmm. roots. So the 3 branches are what everybody sees, right? The signs, symptoms, and diagnoses. And there's your trunk and there's the roots. Your roots is what everybody says, oh, what are the roots? Well, the roots are digestion, inflammation, and your genes. And you have to take a look, though, what are those roots growing in? That's what functional nutrition practitioners focus on, is the terrain in which those roots are growing. What you change that terrain, you change the outlook of the whole tree. All of a sudden, all this up here starts looking better. All those roots start being more healthy. And when you change the terrain with your functional nutrition, with your nutrition, with your epigenetics, and what are epigenetics? That's everything around you that helps express those genes. It's your sleep and relaxation. It's your exercise and movement. It's your nutritional intake and your hydration. It's your community involvement and stress, of course, everything. So that's why I call my business Everything Matters LLC, because everything does affect you, whether you realize it or not, So with the gal that you were talking about, she came to me because she wanted to lose weight. And I said, well, I think let's take a look at it. So some of the tools that we use to dive into a question like, what am I doing? I need to lose weight. I've got this weight that I just can't drop. I don't approach it like I would just eat fewer calories and exercise more, because you really have to back it up. We have a matrix, we have a timeline. They write down, as you said, early childhood, that affects it. That's a consideration. What are some of your adverse childhood events, all the way up through everything you've been prescribed, everything that you've been exposed to chemically, and I just take a look at all of that. And then those epigenetics, we lay out those epigenetics. That's a great tool. Nutritionally, we go back to the 3s. It's very easy to sort of remember them because they all seem to clump up into nice 3s. We have, when you're eating, always consider fat, fiber, protein. Fat, fiber, protein. No, sugar isn't in that mix. And unfortunately, our new food pyramid says that kids can eat 10% of their diet on sugar. That is just really, it's criminal. When you look at, in the 1950s, 1% of all adults had type 2 diabetes, 1950s. Fast forward, 50% of adults now, type 2 diabetes, and 74% of them are overweight or have diabetes. 30% of teens are now entering pre-diabetic or diabetes. 30%. That's just terrible.
Too much. It's too much.
This is another mind-blowing stat. 18% of teens now have fatty liver disease. This is remember, fatty liver disease, that's old men and alcoholics. No, that's sugar and chemicals. That's liver dysfunction. And so we're just, as cancers are up 79% in young children. So the sugar, if another one of the 3s is sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance. If you're not sleeping, you're not pooping, and you don't have blood sugar balance, your body can't heal. Your body only heals when you're sleeping. That's the time it needs to shut down. That's when you have the human growth hormone coming through, and it can't do that during the day. You have to shut off. And so when my client, was staying up late and getting up early and then not sleeping well, because she would, have a few glasses of wine because she thought that calmed her down. But that really was counterproductive. So we took a look at a lot of things. We never addressed the weight after she said, I want to lose weight. We looked at all those other factors. And as a consequence of reeling all that in and becoming mindful about what she was eating and hydrating more and just being more present in her body, in 3 months, she had lost like 20 pounds. She's like,
Wow.
that's the weight I was trying to lose. And I wasn't even really trying to lose it. But
See, that's incredible. I remember that's what happened to me when I knew I had to change my diet and put in like, really good nutritional food into my body. I lost like 12 pounds. And, I was so happy. Like, I had no idea. Like, I didn't think I was overweight, but my body told me differently. So my body said, basically, since you're eating so well, we don't need all this extra fat. Let's get rid of it. So that is kind of a blessing in disguise when you figure out what to eat. If you're eating correctly, you're just going to lose the weight, right?
Yeah. And it's not going to be a big issue. It's not, and that's a thing that people, I got to lose the weight. I got to lose the weight. It becomes stressful.
Yeah.
And if you're looking
that in itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm really proud of you for what you've done. And then to manage your MS symptoms with diet and mindfulness and exercise, hydration, all these things. And I think, with your program like this, you can reach out to more people and help them before it becomes a problem, maybe preventative. Or if you do have this diagnosis, what can we do to mitigate the symptoms or to bring it down and make your life better, have a high quality of life. I myself have autoimmune diseases, and I don't really experience even, arthritis, muscle tension dysphonia, premature atrial contractions. There's been several things, Raynaud's disease. So these all came from stress. Arthritis from stress. Well, my mom had arthritis. That must be why I have it. Well, not necessarily. It was triggered. What were my triggers? Stress, 30 years of sort of uncontrolled stress where I thought I was on top of everything, and I really wasn't. So being mindful can help.
Yeah. I also want to talk about like not just stress, but how you feel. Like, are you experiencing a lot of grief, right? Grief or worry, if you're a person who worries a lot, right? Those negative feelings basically equal stress too, right?
Oh, you're so right. That is a stress. And then you get into these loops when you get used to feeling this grief. Oh, everybody should grieve. You should grieve as you need to grieve. Nobody should tell you not to grieve. If you need to grieve, you grieve the way you need to grieve. Mm-hmm. And at a certain point, when the shock of whatever you're grieving sort of wears off and you become more clear about your daily function, grief takes a hold of you. If I'm sure people listening have experiences, but when you are in a state of grief, it drives the bus, and you just have to sort of wait till you're far enough along to where it doesn't want to drive anymore. You can take over. And but once you're past that, and you need to be mindful about getting past it, because there is such a thing as like long-term grief where you just are stuck and you can't get over it. And it's
unhealthy.
It's unhealthy. It's unhealthy. It just doesn't do anybody any good. Yes, you're right to be sad. Yes, it was a bad situation. and you're still alive, and you need to try to make the best of the rest of it. And you can do that really by being mindful. Again, it comes back to being mindful and not let yourself get into these negative loops. Don't throw yourself pity parties. Don't, become a victim of life.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Nobody gets out unscathed. Nobody gets out without stressors. Yes, some stressors are much, much more drastic than others. We get that. But our brains have such a wonderful capacity to help us along or to hold us back. And it's really an individual choice. You really, if you can concentrate on just knowing, you know what, my amygdala is keeping me, it thinks it's keeping me safe by keeping me in this state that I am familiar with, this stress, this fear, this grief, this whatever it is that you keep going back to because you're comfortable, even in your discomfort. You're comfortable because that's what you're used to. And your amygdala says, this is what you're used to. That's where you need to stay. Remember you're grieving. Remember you're angry. Remember what he said. Remember what she did to you. Be angry about that. It keeps you where it thinks you are comfortable.
Keeps you from moving on and healing, right?
Yes, absolutely. It keeps you from moving on. And so that's when I actually found myself toward the end of what had become a unfortunate relationship. I found myself on my beautiful morning walks thinking negative thoughts. I can't believe he said that. I can't believe she did that. It's like, and I found myself then on these walks. I'm out in nature. I'm where I want to just be relaxing and in touch with this beauty around me. And I'm thinking negative thoughts. And I trained myself once I recognized it. We're going back to being mindful again. Once I recognized it, I had to start talking to my amygdala. I didn't want it to be mad at me. It's part of me. I just want to get control of it and not let it control me. So I was just like, stop. Thank you, amygdala. I know you're trying to protect me, but stop. I've got this. And, it sounds crazy. You're talking to your brain, but it worked after like 2 or 3 times of me catching myself and saying, thank you, amygdala. Stop. I've got this. I don't need you right now. And then moving on and shifting, it really helps. It really does.
Yeah. That's important. And in fact, I was listening to a podcast not too long ago, and it was a health coach trying to help somebody. And this one gal had an autoimmune disease, and she was the client was doing all the right things. She was eating right. She was exercising. She even said her sleep was better, but she still wasn't healing about like after 12 weeks. She still wasn't getting better. And so the health coach said, you're doing everything right. What do you think is going on? And she took a deep dive into her brain pattern. And she goes, is there something coming up you're worried about? Are you angry about anything? Is there something that you keep thinking about? And the gal said, she goes, I'm worried once I get totally healed that I have to go back to my crappy job. And she was worried that her husband would judge her about not wanting to go back to this job. And that's what was holding her back from healing. So it's these things that we keep playing back in our brain. If there's something that's not going to make you happy, it's not going to bring you joy, it's not going to heal you as quickly, right?
Yeah, that is a great example. Like you're saying, everybody thinks differently, and a lot of people have different reasons, but you really have to do the deep dive.
We've got to change our belief system. A lot of people have these beliefs that aren't true, and they need to shed that, right?
Yeah, well, a lot of people have their own experiences that make them feel like this. So it's hard for us to say, gosh, just think this way. So it really helps though to talk to them, as you were saying, on the podcast I did, and help them sort of come up with that themselves, because you can't say you're doing this, therefore this is happening to you.
Mhm.
I mean, you can say that, but it's really, people might be offended by that. But if you're coming up with it on your own and just saying, gosh, I'm keeping myself sick because I don't want to go back to work. Or
right. You just have to keep asking questions, right? You have to figure out, okay, we need to get down to the bottom of this. What is preventing this person from getting well?
And some people have the I can't stuck.
Yeah.
Because they haven't had the successes they want in the past. So they say, I can't do that. And they just give up. I can't. And once you train your body that you can't, you can't. So what it takes is actually training your body that you can. You really can. But it takes a shift. It's not as much a paradigm shift as really just becoming more mindful of what you're doing, that everything we think, every thought we take in affects our cells, down to our cells. We know that we're anywhere from 60 to 70% water, and we're affected. You've seen the studies on how thought and prayer and energy
Affects water too.
Water.
Yes. The cells and the energy in water.
Yeah. And what are we?
Mostly water.
So those negative thoughts and being around negative people all the time, we're all exposed to negative people, but we can try to limit that as much as possible, or put up a shield so we're not taking on their problems and we're not becoming them and owning their problems. Everybody is exposed to negativity, and we just have to choose to rise above it. This is a very tough time. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world that is very ugly, not fun. But can you do anything about that, Adrienne, right now, sitting here right now, about what's going on in the world?
No, we have to be as positive as we can. You know, for instance, I am a member of a autoimmune disease group on Facebook. And one day I just wanted to put out, like, I asked a question. I said, how many people out there, and there was like a lot of, like 15,000 people in this group. How many people think that you can heal your autoimmune disease? And only 50% thought they can heal it. So part of it is your belief system. If you don't believe that you can get well, you won't. That's my, I mean, it was an aha moment for me when I learned what most people think.
That is the root. That's really the root of it. We have to shift our thought patterns, and you can still be you. You can have your personality. You can do what you have to do in a day, but really you can minimize your negative thoughts and your willingness to adopt this negativity and make it become yours. It's hard. It's hard, and it is training. But you know, once you do this, and I know you've worked on this, and I worked on it for years, and fortunately, it becomes a lifestyle where you're able to smile and you're able to go on and you're able to wake up with a song in your head in the morning and greet the day. You don't need to be fearful or angry or hurt. Yes, a lot of people, everybody has some degree of pain in their life. A lot of people, a lot more, and it gets real serious. At that time, that's when you really need to dig in and rely on your brain to help heal yourself, to believe that this isn't the way it has to be for the rest of your life. That this isn't your definition. This isn't the definition of who you are. This is a temporary, unfortunate situation. It's really ugly. Even if a doctor put a diagnosis on it and called it a name, it isn't a death sentence. It's a wake-up call It says something that you are doing in your life is not conducive to your well-being. What is that? Break it down. Look at those epigenetics we talked about.
Yep. So you're saying it's an imbalance somewhere, right?
An imbalance, exactly. So, gosh, there's just so much we could talk about. I just love talking to you about this. There's so many things that we can introduce into our lives and things that we could take out of our lives that are causing unnecessary stressors. It's not just walking away from a stressful situation. It's what are you eating that's causing inflammation? Do you eat a lot of processed foods? The majority of people eat 70% of their diet as ultra-processed foods. That's inflammatory. We talked about what inflammation does to your body and what the long-term effects are. Are you eating a lot of sugar? Sugar is, I don't know why they still say kids can eat as much sugar. We talked about this. It is heart disease. There's so many things besides diabetes. Everybody knows, okay, sugar, diabetes, but heart disease, it just is a cascade of problems, brain fog, all kinds of dysfunction. If you're eating seed oils or vegetable oils, canola oil, vegetable oil, corn oil, sunflower, all the safflower, all these seed oils are processed at an extremely high heat, regardless of where they come from, and they're not meant to be eaten, but they have to heat them to such a high temperature to kill off all the pathogens that are in there, that they're so oxidated. By the time they get into your body, they create all kinds of oxidative stress. Those are the free radicals that are running around without the electrons, that are robbing electrons from healthy cells, that kill the now unhealthy cells, and they sort of grow. And we can minimize that oxidative stress by minimizing the things that we eat that cause it, the processed foods, the oils, the unhealthy fats, wheat, often anything trans fat, any deep fried, and just be aware of that. You think, oh my gosh, how is that possible? I wouldn't eat anything, but you can do it. I know you've done it. Adrienne, you've done it.
Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it.
I do it. I don't eat that stuff. You shop, you go to farmers markets, you get organic, you shop on the outside. And really, people say, oh my gosh, it's so expensive. You know what a bag of chips costs now? I mean, don't buy the chips. Get your organic broccoli, for goodness sakes. Oh, that just doesn't sound good. Yeah, because you've trained your tongue as to your taste buds replace themselves every week or so. So you train yourself to eat the way you're eating now, and you can retrain it. You can retrain yourself to eat healthy. I have someone that I've been cooking for the last 3 months, and he needed to, he had been eating perfectly healthy. Healthy, he thought, but he had this extra 15 pounds right in his gut, couldn't get rid of it. I was cooking and he eats more than he used to eat. He's satiated. You're sated for more quickly and for a longer period of time because your body is receiving the nutrients it needs. When you eat a whole bag of potato chips, you can keep eating and keep eating because your body isn't saying, gosh, I'm getting nutrients, I'm full. It's saying, come on, I'm getting the stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not getting any nutrients.
Your taste buds like it, and their chips really are not that filling. So you'll keep eating them. I can vouch for that.
But can you overeat on steak? No, you get full because it's great protein.
Right.
It's full of all these they'll break down into amino acids. Our brain needs them. So just be more mindful. There's a couple things to think about when you're eating. Eat the rainbow. Eat those colorful foods. I talked about fat, fiber, protein. And there's another thing that you can use to sort of guide what you eat. Another tool, it's your we call it the yes, no, maybe list. That's from Andrea Nakayama at the Functional Nutrition Alliance. Yes, no, maybe. You list out all the foods that, yes, you know. Well, first of all, list out all the foods that you eat. That's a good challenge right there. What are you eating? Then you're actually taking a look at it. You be honest about that. And then go and put a Y, an N, or an M. So you put a yes at everything by what you're eating that's nutritious, that you know is good for you. And then you look at all those things, the donuts, the ho-hos and the potato chips. You know those aren't really good for you, and you eat them anyway. So put an N by those, because those are no. And there's some you're not sure, because maybe you have a sensitivity, or you're really not sure if they're good for you to eat. So you put an M for maybe. And then you look at it and you try to focus on eating those yes foods. You address the maybe and figure out if it is a yes or no. Maybe talk to your functional nutrition practitioner, or talk to your friend, talk to your doctor. Is this good for me? And then you eat those good foods. And then you introduce things like turmeric, curcumin, ginger, your healthy oils, your omega-3 oils, your avocado oil, your coconut oil, your olive oil. And don't cook. You can cook lower temperatures with olive oil, but it's really good if you just steam your vegetables. And then after they're steamed, toss them in some garlic and olive oil and a little salt, sea salt or Himalayan salt, and maybe some diced tomatoes. And you've got a delicious, and a squeeze of lemon. That is a delicious, delicious vegetable. And you didn't heat up any oils. If you are heating oils, use your avocado oil, or coconut oil is pretty good about that. But dump all those toxic oils that your body doesn't know what to do with. So it gets
right
away. It's terrible.
It stresses your body out when you eat those bad oils, those seed oils, and those trans fats. That's what we need to stay away from, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, Susan. So besides diet and exercise, right? That's a stress reliever. And by the way, everybody, you don't have to go to a gym to, get in your exercise. A simple walk, 20-minute, 30-minute walk can do it too, right? But what else, Susan, can relieve stress? And besides, being mindful, right? And stopping that looping thought, negative thought. Is there anything else that you can share
sure.
before we finish up here?
Yeah, thank you. And all of those things that we talked about, really important. In addition to bring yourself into the parasympathetic, the sympathetic nervous system is your flight or fight or freeze. Your parasympathetic is your rest and digest. To bring ourselves into the parasympathetic nervous system, we could do the box breathing. We could breathe. First of all, stop what you're doing and catch yourself. Are you holding your breath, or are you breathing? If you're holding your breath, try to be mindful about that and start actually breathing. When you breathe, you want to draw your breath into your lower lungs. You expand your diaphragm down. You breathe. They call it belly breathing. You're pulling your diaphragm down to expand and breathe. So your belly is going up and down, not so much your lungs. So you take, let's call it box breathing. Most of us have heard about that by now. You just stop, inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4 through your nose to improve your nitric oxide. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. You could do that anywhere, anytime. It helps you do that for several courses, and it helps move you back into the parasympathetic nervous system, because we can't be stressed out when we're breathing in a relaxed way. Our body knows that. So that helps us move. Get involved in a group. If you're suffering, somebody else has similar conditions from which they're suffering as well. Adrienne, you said you're part of a MS Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that is really excellent to help you realize you're not alone. Don't suffer in silence. Nobody nobody's can help you. You can't help yourself if you try to bottle it all up and keep it out all in. It just creates more
social connections, right? You need to be social.
Volunteer somewhere. Volunteer, foster your meaningful relationships and minimize the toxic ones. Step away if you can. Join groups. Start a group. You can't find a group. There are other people out there who can't find a group, and they would love it if you started a group. It can be very casual. It could be very casual. It doesn't need to be anything more than maybe getting on a Zoom. Zoom is free up to 45 minutes. That doesn't need to cost you. Google Meets is free. So if you can't meet in your community, find somehow to meet and foster relationships. Also, remember the golden rule, become a friend. That's easy. You want friends, become a friend. And you'll just be amazed what a little human connection can do for your spirit and your day. It can lift up your whole life. But nobody knows you're hurting unless you sort of get out. And you don't need to start a conversation by saying, hey, I'm hurting. That's where these groups are really handy, because there are already people who are in your same condition. But when you're a friend, listening is so important. Then you realize, gosh, everybody's got stuff they're dealing with. Maybe I can handle this too, and I can. And then you have these little successes and with friendships and reaching out and being out and not feeling frightened or anxious. And then you say, I can do that again. I'm going to do that again. Maybe not tomorrow, but the next day for sure. Until it becomes part of your routine. You can control your own well-being. It's amazingly powerful. If you're not sitting back waiting for somebody to fix you, if you're saying, oh, nobody knows the answers, dig into yourself and say, gosh, there are some very simple things I could do. Am I walking? Am I breathing? Am I eating toxic foods? Do I have a network? Am I sleeping? Am I drinking enough water? There's all these simple things that don't cost anything, that don't require a trip to any specialist, or you could just start with yourself and become mindful about what you are doing to create your own well-being.
Thank you, Susan. What a perfect ending to our conversation. I totally agree with everything you said. Okay, so, and I'm going to put notes on the bottom of this. So do you want to share a website or that where people can get a hold of you?
Sure. All of my information is at the bottom of my page, my website, everythingmatters.care. It's not .com, so go to everythingmatters.care and scroll down to the bottom. You can reach me there and learn a little bit more about what I do, as well as far as individual, group, family, couple, and corporate counseling. And I've got some great testimonials on there and lots to look at. And a picture of my son, Nick, and my dog. And Nick was my inspiration, of course, for getting into this. And the story's on my website if you want to learn more about it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you again. Really. You shared a lot of great information, and I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.